Chewie, we're home. Hello everybody and welcome to a special Star Wars edition of the Disney News Update. Now just a warning for everybody, this video is going to talk about all of the details that we have come to learn through Star Wars Celebrations and the teasers that came out. So if you're trying to avoid Star Wars spoilers or you want to go light on Star Wars spoilers, one, why did you click on this link? Two, you're probably going to want to close out of this link because I'm going to be talking about a lot of Star Wars. So, now's the time to do it. So with that out of the way, let's talk Star Wars. If you've been living under a rock these past couple of days, Star Wars Celebration kicked off. It is the reoccurring fan convention for Star Wars. This is the 10th Star Wars Celebrations, and it is an important one because this is the one in which we're getting a ton of details about Star Wars Episode 7, The Force Awakens. The convention kicked off with a panel all about Episode 7, of which the biggest thing we got out of it was a new trailer, which I'm sure everybody's seen. And if you haven't, 25 million other people at this point have seen it. You should go check it out. It's really awesome. But the panel itself was kind of cool. I'd recommend watching it, even though it was filled with a lot of fluff. It was essentially just like a Q&A session, and it was like a lot of softball Q&A stuff, like how do you feel being in Star Wars? How do you feel coming back to Star Wars? What are we going to see? Is it going to be cool? Bunch of teases. We can't talk about this. Outside of, obviously, the trailer, I think the coolest thing that came out of that Q&A session was the revelation that the rolling ball droid BB-8 is a real droid. Now, this is the droid that was introduced in the first teaser, rolling with the little, almost R2-D2-esque droid head sort of floating on top or just like gliding on top of the sphere. And I think I, like most people out there, just assumed it was CGI because the logistics of something like that just seemed too complicated to put into a movie. But it turns out they actually built a functional BB-8 droid prop for the film, and they rolled it out on set, and it was rolling around and making noises, and I think that was really cool. One, because it's just a cool twist, after 6 months of looking at this droid that we just all assumed was computer generated. Two, I think it says a lot about Lucasfilm's dedication to using practical props and practical sets in Episode 7, which, a lot of the backlash of the prequels that everything was on green screen. There was too much computer graphics used. It made everything feel fake and clean and just pulled you out of that world. So I think it was really exciting. And we also got some new details regarding Star Wars Battlefront, the game being developed by DICE and EA, the continuation of the Battlefront series, which was one that I think started over 10 years ago now. And then, of course, we got the second teaser, which, I won't go too much into this teaser. I know a lot of places out there do the whole frame-by-frame breakdown. I think there are a couple of cool moments I do want to talk about because I think they're really great, and they might not be the sort of thing that people grab onto right away. And that actually is the very first shot, for one. And that's the shot of the small little speeder just sort of moving across the desert. And then it sort of reveals this massive crashed Star Destroyer. And I think this shot is great for so many reasons. I think it's a beautiful shot. I think it's very telling of the way that this film is being approached. By that, I mean, looking at that shot, it reminded me a lot of the first shot of Episode 4. New Hope. And that shot is famous. It's famous not only because it kicks off Star Wars, which became such a massive saga and such an amazing force in filmmaking, but it's also a really fantastic piece of filmmaking. This original shot, if you don't remember it, is the blockade runner just sort of shooting past the screen, firing off screen, and then you see the Star Destroyer, and it keeps going. And it keeps going, and it keeps going, and you start to get the sense of just how large this ship is. And that not only is a spectacle in itself and a great way to kick off a sci-fi film, but it's also a great way of telling a story visually, right? You have this tiny little ship running away from the big ship and firing back and forth, and then you see this massive ship chasing after it. And it's just immediately you get a sense of the power dynamic between these two forces and what's going on, and it sets up the tension and the stakes that you're about to have unfold throughout the film. And I think you get something similar from this shot. One, you've got that reveal where the sand dune just sort of starts to climb up, and then it gives way to the metal, and then you realize it's this massive Star Destroyer. It immediately, I think, establishes the power dynamic, right? You've got this Star Destroyer just crashed and in the desert, and it makes very clear that the Empire did not really do very well towards the end of the last saga, or the last trilogy, and I think most people knew that already. I think it is a beautiful piece of filmmaking just because it is a simple panning shot from left to right. Think about any other, Hollywood director today, in so many ways they could have done the shot in such a flashy way, CG following the speeder, and then it pans up or it flies around, or it pulls out or something. But no, it's this very simple just pan. And it's funny because J.J. Abrams during the panel mentions that Star Wars, as much as it is a sci-fi space opera, is also sort of a Western, and that pan and that shot just is very reminiscent of like the Sergio Leone spaghetti westerns, and I think that's cool that this is the style that J.J. Abrams is approaching the film with, and you get all of this just from that first shot. There's a bunch of other amazing stuff, just great ways to introduce the characters, whether it's Luke with his hand on the droid, or seeing Princess Leia but only seeing her hands as well. A lot of hands in the trailer, and then you've got shots like the Millennium Falcon flying into the exhaust of the Super Star Destroyer that's crashed and sort of weaving through. And it's very reminiscent of when the Millennium Falcon's on its run in the second Death Star in Return of the Jedi. And again, it's a different setup. It's a different situation, but it is remnant of these old shots and these old visuals. And I think that's really great because that's a balance that this film is going to have to really tread on carefully, right? It has to have enough fan service and be memorable enough and remind people of the nostalgia of that original series so that, they have that warm, fuzzy feeling, but it still has to be new and unique and original enough to stand on its own. It just can't be pure fan service. And we see that so many times through, just the few teasers we've gotten so far in the costumes. Look at the way the stormtroopers and the snow troopers look, very reminiscent of the old stormtroopers, but different enough that they stand on their own. And then, of course, just the perfect way to end that trailer with Han and Chewie. I would be lying if I said I didn't tear up at the end there. And that's just because this film saga is so important to me. I grew up with it. My mom told me stories about how her and her friends went to go see Star Wars a few times when it came out because it was such a phenomenon. And then I have my own stories of growing up and being excited about the prequels and a little disappointed about the prequels, but mainly excited and going to the movie on opening day. And I went to film school thanks to movies like Star Wars. So to be able to go back to this and revisit a trilogy that I thought never would have happened within this time period. You have to remember that when the prequels were coming to an end, George had said he wasn't going to do the next trilogy. He was getting too old for it. And he also had this sort of stance where he was just going to take Star Wars to the grave with him. He had no interest in passing on the baton, so to speak. And he ended up doing it. And that's so great. And I thought it would have been decades before something like this could have happened. And here I am, still young and enjoying it. And I get to be a nerd again and obsess over all these little details and come up with fan theories, which you're going to hear by the end of the video. And to get that experience that then I will hopefully get to pass down to, my kids one day whenever I have them is really exciting. So, of course, I teared up at the end to see Han and Chewie back. So that's the trailer. In regards to Battlefront, we got a cinematic trailer that used in-engine footage. I'm actually a little more lukewarm about this game. It does feel kind of rushed. There's no space dogfights. There's no, wide variety of maps. I think it's like 5 planets you play on. No main campaign, which I guess for Battlefront's actually okay because Battlefront's not really known for its campaign. But it does sort of feel like they're taking a bare bones approach with it just to make sure it comes out on time. And we haven't seen any gameplay yet. So I'm reserving judgment. It could still be really cool. It's cool that you can play in first person or third person mode. It's cool that they're coming out with free DLC in early December that sort of explains what happened at the Battle of Jakku, which is that desert planet that you see in all of these teasers. That was another cool revelation, that the desert planet was not Tatooine like I think we all assumed. And there's just another example of here's a different planet, but it still has an aesthetic that reminds you of the old trilogy. So again, sticking with that. I mean, they're doing things right. And you know what? I'd much rather DICE do a bare bones version of Battlefront and expand on it for a sequel than try and pack in all this stuff and rush it. And then they're all, B-rate and then you get a lousy video game. But not seeing gameplay footage made me not super excited. And I think I'm just overwhelmed by the teaser and all the movie stuff. Anyway, fan theories. So I think, like many people, I've already started to come up with fan theories of what I think the movie's going to be about, how I think the characters are connected to one another. And I think part of the fun experience of getting excited for a Star Wars film is sharing that with people. And, it used to be with the prequels would be I'd go on like a forum about Star Wars and, type on it like, almost like a cliche geeky thing to do. But that's what I did. And I was super excited. Now I get to share it through video with all of you. So let me just preface this by saying everything from this point on is just my fan theory. It's based on everything that we officially know about the movies. I have no inside information, obviously. I'm not basing this off of leaks of anything. This is everything that was accessible at celebrations and these trailers. And who knows, maybe it's right, maybe it's wrong. I think it's just for fun. But here's my main thing is I am convinced that Rey, the female character played by Daisy Ridley, is Han Solo and Princess Leia's daughter. I think this for a couple of reasons. One, we know from the panel at Celebrations that she's living on Jakku and she's sort of self-sufficient in this sort of junk shipyard. And that's the sort of, I think, lifestyle that would require a lot of engineering know-how and spaceship know-how and the sort of thing that I think you might pick up if your father was Han Solo. Not to mention, in the Celebrations, they had an exhibit with a lot of characters and concept art for these characters. And at the concept art for Rey's costume, you see a photo of her holding Han Solo's pistol, the DL-44. So I think you combine that. I think you add that onto it. I think you add on the fact that her name would then be Rey Solo, which I think is kind of cool. And, it would put her in place to be a female Jedi, which I think would be a cool thing to do with this trilogy. All of these line up to me thinking that she is probably Han Solo's daughter. And then you've got John Boyega, who plays Finn, the stormtrooper. And I think the overwhelming, rumor right now is that he was a legitimate stormtrooper. This isn't him in disguise, sort of like, A New Hope. But this is, him getting hit with his conscience and realizing that, maybe the stormtroopers are not the greatest group to work with. And maybe he turns on them and he's on the run. And that's why he ends up on Jakku. And you sort of see that in the first teaser when he just jumps up and he's shocked and, he's in his stormtrooper gear. So maybe, he turns on them and he breaks out of there and he's running away. And we know that he meets up with Rey on Jakku. So maybe we're looking at a story where he escapes and he meets her down there and she helps him survive and escape whatever this new empire is. We have characters like Poe Dameron, the X-Wing pilot played by Oscar Isaac. And we know that from the panel that he's sent on a mission by a princess, presumably Princess Leia, and it has him sort of cross paths with Finn. So this is all sort of building to a plot that I think I'm getting to. And the last piece of this puzzle is Kylo Ren, the bad guy. And we don't for sure know who's playing Kylo Ren yet. And the presuming rumor is this idea that he's collecting all of this Sith lore or the Sith relics. And that's why in the teaser you see the burnt up skull of Darth Vader, because he's collecting Darth Vader's skull. And, we see the lightsaber, which we don't know for sure, but looks pretty close to Luke's original saber. So Anakin's saber as well. Anakin, it was passed on to Luke through Obi-Wan. He loses it in Bespin. Somehow it ends up in somebody's hands, but that's exactly what that saber looks like. We also have Kylo Ren's saber, the one that, there was a lot of debate about because it had the two little blades sticking out. And that seems like an antiquated design, right? Like old style swords. Doesn't seem very, efficient. So what if that in itself is one of the relics that he's collecting and he's using? Maybe that mask is a relic. A lot of people say that it looks a lot like Revan's mask from Knights of the Old Republic. Although that's not technically canon anymore. Maybe there's some sort of influence on that. So my theory is Finn on the ship has this turn of conscience, decides he doesn't want to work for these bad people anymore. For one reason or another, he either ends up with or steals this saber, this lightsaber, Luke's saber, and escapes to Jakku. He's on this planet, and the reason I know I'm like guessing or think that he's got the saber is because in the concept art for him in that exhibit, you see that he's gotten his jacket tucked away, that saber that is being handed over to Princess Leia in the teaser. So he's down there. That's when he runs into BB-8 the droid and Rey Solo, who for one reason or another is living alone on this junkyard desert planet. And they're trying to escape from being chased by this new empire. And maybe Oscar Isaac is sent by Princess Leia to go rescue them. And they tag along with Han Solo and Chewbacca, because why wouldn't Han go and save his daughter? And that sort of kicks off that story. And that's as far as I got. I don't know how much of that's true. I don't know how much of that isn't true. There are also like a bunch of rumors flying around. For instance, there's this new chrome stormtrooper in the teaser and nobody knows who that is. There's some theories that I saw that it was like a clone of Boba Fett just by the cape and the way they were walking. I think the cool theory I really like is that it's being played by the actress Gwendolyn Christie, who you older viewers might know as Brienne of Tarth from Game of Thrones, who we know is going to be in the film as like this like really awesome, weathered veteran female stormtrooper who maybe is the one sent to go after Finn and chase him down and get this lightsaber back. But that's my theory. I don't know. What's your theory? What do you think's going on with Star Wars Episode 7? Did you watch all of this stuff? Are you as excited as I am? I hope you are, because I think it's a really fun process to go through. Even if the movies end up being horrible, and I don't think that's going to be the case with these. With the prequel, I still had a blast with each episode, just sort of theorizing and going over all the details and getting all these pieces of news and getting excited for the premiere. And I get to do it all over again with a whole new trilogy and then more movies beyond that. Anyway, let me know what you think in the comments below. How excited are you? Let me know about that. What's your fan theory? Leave it in the comments. You could also let me know on Twitter at RobPlays. I want to thank you all for watching. Whatever you're doing this weekend, make the most of it because it makes it that much better. And I hope to see you all next time for the next Disney update. And may the Force be with you. Bye, everybody.